How's it going, Giants fans? My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. And today we want to discuss some interesting tweets and messages on Instagram from Odell Beckham Jr. indicating that maybe, just maybe, he wants back into the New York media market, which in my opinion, he should stay far away from if he wants to have any sort of sanity for the next 10, 20 years. But we do remember the days of OBJ and essentially him being the only reason I enjoyed watching the Giants play. Of course, I liked watching Eli Manning toward the end of his career and just seeing kind of history unfold. But, that team really was not very good. Of course, we made the postseason in 2016, did not really materialize to anything. But OBJ, man, every single week I tuned in knowing I was going to see something special, knowing I was going to see something that made me extremely happy, even if we lost. Like he was always on his game, did not miss many opportunities to showcase just how talented he was. And, coming off a Super Bowl win, tore his Achilles in the Super Bowl, really unfortunate for him. But, he probably wouldn't even be able to play for the majority of the 2022 season, to be real. But he had some interesting things to say to a fan on Instagram, specifically that, he always wanted to win a Super Bowl in New York. He always wanted to be great in New York. And then, just kind of use some emojis indicating that maybe one day he will make a return. Anthony, how does that make you feel? I know you're a big OBJ fan.
I'm a huge OBJ fan. I never thought that he should have left the Giants. I always hated the move. I know hindsight's 2020. In retrospect, the Giants probably got the better end of the deal compared to the Cleveland Browns in that historic trade to send OBJ to Cleveland. OBJ said he was sent there to die. I know that's probably what Dave Gettleman was doing. They just had crazy beef, but Dave Gettleman's gone, and the Giants are embracing big personalities now. They're letting people be themselves. They don't ship people away for having too much of a social media following, right? I mean, you're seeing Kadarius Toney's rap music being played at practice. You're seeing Kayvon Thibodeau show up with his bling on. Like, it's a new era for the New York Giants. Brian Dable, Mike Kafka, Wink Martindale, Joe Shane. These guys want these players to feel comfortable, be themselves, promoting a really, really healthy working, environment, which I think is awesome. And it seems to have OBJ's interest peaked. I know OBJ didn't want to come back to New York as long as Dave Gettleman was there. But now that we're at this opportunity with the Giants having a lot of issues in terms of wide receiver depth, a lot of injuries going on at the wide receiver position, there is one veteran wide receiver on the market who stands out, and it is OBJ. And for whatever reason, he's interested in coming back to the Giants. Listen, is this realistic? No. Should it happen? Probably not. But would I love to see it happen? Absolutely. I would love to see that kind of homecoming, that kind of reunion. I know a lot of Giants fans hate Odell Beckham Jr. They want nothing to do with him. They don't want him to come back. But there are a lot of Giants fans that would definitely show up to MetLife Stadium wearing the number 13, getting rowdy as F to see OBJ suit back up for the Giants. And honestly, I think I'd be one of them, man. I think it would just be such a cool story. I just remember, as you mentioned, those early years of his career, especially that rookie season, the Giants were a bad team, man. They didn't make the 2016 playoffs if Odell Beckham Jr. wasn't on that team. He single-handedly carried us to that win against the Cowboys, that win against the Ravens. Like, he was a monster in his prime, and I understand he's totally past his prime. Odell Beckham Jr. is not the same player that he once was, but just that nostalgia and just that presence that he used to have here in New York, New Jersey, I would love to recapture just a little bit of those moments, just kind of reflect on them with him and kind of create some new history, some new special moments with OBJ. I think it would be really cool. I'm all for it, but honestly, the way the Giants are with their salary cap space, probably not too likely.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, like, he's injured right now. Like, he's recovering from an Achilles injury, which takes like almost a year to come back from, realistically. So you're probably looking at OBJ kind of just hanging out, doing this thing this entire season, and maybe coming back in 2023. This is the second time he's torn it. So it's like, this is a lot to deal with rehabilitation wise, just constantly coming back from injury. The Giants could probably scoop him up on a very cheap contract if they wanted to bring the entire fan base together for the 2023 season. That'd be a pretty good way to start things off. But I'll tell you what, like, he seems to have matured. He's won his Super Bowl. Like, he's already gotten to the highest level. He's done the thing. And I think now he's kind of in the stage of his career where he's like, I just want to enjoy the process. I just want to enjoy what time left I have. And maybe, he would bring kind of that veteran leadership after Sterling Shepard's contract expires. Who knows? This is obviously just like a shot in the dark. Chances are he'll never suit up in blue again. But I'll tell you what, there's definitely some media members that will definitely be shaking in their boots if he does come back. But it's kind of funny just to think about all this shit that he took over the years. But end of the day, definitely a guy that I very much enjoyed watching, and a guy that really made watching the Giants enjoyable for, the last couple of years that he was there. So definitely something to appreciate. But nonetheless, I want to discuss Saquon Barkley as well. And why he might be in for a big 2022 season. So we're talking about two of the most polarizing players the Giants have had in the last decade. Barkley, of course, has been injury prone the last couple of years. Last year had the ankle issue against the Dallas Cowboys, kind of a freak accident. Only played in 13 games. And now he's coming back seemingly 100%. The offense is going to really extrapolate on his skill set. His strengths are going to activate him as a receiver. They're going to get him involved. He almost had more receiving yards in his rookie season than he's had the last 3 years combined. So you're looking at a player who really has underwhelmed after that stellar rookie campaign where he had 15 touchdowns and 2,000 all-purpose yards. He only scored 2 rushing touchdowns last year. So, Saquon Barkley, the main catalyst, in my opinion, for his growth and development and really just getting back to where he was in general is the offensive line. You're looking at Mark Lewinsky, you're looking at Evan Neal, replacing Will Hernandez and Nate Solder. Those are monstrous improvements on the offensive line. Then you have your Andrew Thomas of the world, who is geared up to be a Pro Bowler this year, if not better. Left guard's a little bit of a question mark. And then you have John Feliciano, of course, who's, slotted to start at center. And, better than Matt Skura, better than Ben Bredesen and Billy Price. So there's that. But, Anthony, we're looking at Saquon Barkley. In my opinion, Daniel Jones probably stands to gain the most from this improved offensive line. But based on like the logistical aspects and the logic that goes into an offensive line needing time to gel, they need a season. They, it doesn't immediately fix itself. So I'll go as far as to say I think Saquon Barkley might benefit the most from this new and improved offensive line because run blocking seems to be a little bit more efficient, easier to get down than it is a pass blocking, offensive lineman like Evan Neal coming out of college.
Yeah, no, and I'm in complete agreement with you on that. I think the Giants' offensive line should be much improved if they stay healthy. Health is a real issue for the Giants' offensive line right now. Shane Lemieux not likely to be ready for the season opener against the Tennessee Titans. So these guys got to get healthy and stay healthy. But one thing that we've seen across the board, first string, second string, and third string, we've seen improvements in every regard, especially in run blocking, especially at practice. We've seen a lot of big Saquon Barkley runs down the sideline. He bounces it outside on those outside zones, and Evan Neal is the lead blocker, or Andrew Thomas is the lead blocker, or the backup third string left guard is the lead blocker. We've seen a lot of great stuff from the Giants offensive line in run blocking. A lot of big Saquon Barkley runs in practice, and I do think we're in store for a huge Saquon Barkley season in 2022 if he can stay healthy. Now, health is going to be the factor for the Giants pretty much in every regard. The secondary has also got some injuries going around. They're getting healthy now. The offensive line is not getting healthy. In fact, they're getting less healthy. The playmakers are also getting less healthy. So it's just really a factor of injuries, right? Health. Can these guys stay healthy? I mean, if Saquon Barkley stays healthy, yes, I think that the offensive line is going to help him significantly in terms of getting back to form in 2022 because I think the run blocking has been massively improved this offseason. I love the addition of Mark Lewinsky. I think he's a great run blocker, and I love the addition of Evan Neal, who I think is going to be a great run blocker for a long time. And of course, you mentioned that I think we've seen improvements in the pass protection department from these guys, but there are going to be growing pains once we hit the regular season with the pass protection. That's a given. That always happens. But one of the things that I really, really like about this new era of the Giants is the coaching. I think that the scheme so far, everything that we've seen in the preseason, everything that we've seen in practice has been excellent. We're seeing a lot of outside zone. We're seeing a lot of play action, which can also set up bites on the run game to set up big passes, give more time in the pocket, mask some of those pass blocking deficiencies, all that kind of stuff. It just plays into each other. It compounds, so to speak, right? So the offensive scheme is really helping the players, putting them into positions to succeed. And I like these outside zones. Saquon Barkley seems to be running really well to the outside, which is something that I've always said. Stop using him as a power back. He is a glorified scat back, but play to that strength. Get him involved in the receiving game. Get him involved on those outside zone running plays. That's how you maximize Saquon Barkley's talents, and that's what I've been seeing from the Giants throughout this summer. And I think that's what's super exciting about it. But yeah, speaking to the point of the offensive line, I think that the run blocking is already shown to be a major improvement in the preseason so far. And I understand it's only preseason. The Giants haven't faced many starters out there just yet. But I think that it's a lot of improvement, a lot of great progress throughout the summer. And I'm really excited to see Saquon Barkley hopefully have a big season opener against the Titans in just under a month here.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, this is an interesting situation the Giants are in because you have Saquon Barkley, who's headed toward the end of his fifth-year option with the Giants after the 2022 season concludes. So what happens if he has a phenomenal year? What happens if he kills it? What happens if he really like sees the best version of himself in this Brian Dable, Mike Kafka led offense. They're going to use him as a receiver. They're going to split him out wide. You're going to shift him out of the backfield. They're going to use him in motion. They're going to run him up, and utilize his aggressiveness and strength instead of, asking him to dance. This is going to be a different version of Saquon Barkley that we've seen in the last couple of years if he can stay healthy, in my opinion. But the question is, what is enough to justify an extension? Do you think there's a world where the Giants even extend it? We've had this conversation before, but I'm starting to think like if he really blows up and he becomes a key factor, like if you have a young quarterback, if you're going to go and draft a quarterback next year, maybe you want to have a star player next to him because you can reset that rookie window. You have a lot of money to spare. Maybe Saquon makes sense on maybe not a long-term extension, but maybe a 2-year deal. I don't think he would accept that. Maybe he'll be looking for something longer, but I don't think teams are investing that much in running backs like him these days because, the unreliability definitely stands out. But, do you think there's a world where Joe Schoen, kind of breaks his modern analytical logic and says, you know what, Saquon's a guy we want to keep around?
It's really tough to say. One thing that I will say is that in terms of John Mara looking for the financials of the team, he's not going to sign off on a Saquon Barkley trade. It's going to take a lot to sign off on a Saquon Barkley trade, like it took a lot to sign off an Odell Beckham Jr. trade, just to bring this full circle, because this is a player that is very much loved by a large portion of the fan base. And man, Saquon Barkley is a money maker. He sells a lot of jerseys, a lot of merchandise. You got to keep that in mind. That is important. The team does need to be financially successful every year. And Saquon Barkley is a huge reason that the Giants are one of the highest revenued teams in the NFL. I was reading statistics about the revenue from all the different teams. Despite the Giants being as bad as they've been for as long as they've been, they still turn out one of the biggest profits in the NFL year after year because, of course, playing in the New York market and having a superstar like Saquon Barkley, now Kayvon Thibodeau, formerly Odell Beckham Jr., that helps a lot. So I know back when the Odell Beckham Jr. trade happened, there was conversation of, John Mara, how did you let this happen? Why didn't you step in and say no? And he said, well, I had to get convinced by everybody. It took a lot of convincing to allow me to sign off on this trade. If Saquon Barkley is going to be departing the Giants, it's going to take a lot of convincing of John Mara. He's going to have to say, yeah, I'm okay with it. He has to okay that move, whether it be via trade, letting him walk in free agency, a sign and swap deal, where you put him on the franchise tag or transition tag and then trade him. That kind of stuff you are going to need John Mara's approval for. And I don't know if Joe Schoen's going to get that too easily. It's going to have to be a good package coming back in return for Saquon Barkley because the Giants have invested a lot into Saquon Barkley. He was the second overall pick in 2018. And it does feel at times that they dug themselves into a hole that they just can't climb out of. You kind of just have to full commit to it at this point. That's sometimes how I feel with Saquon Barkley. Personally, I'm not in the train where you should be paying a running back that much money. But at the same time, if Daniel Jones is going to be departing in the offseason and you're bringing in a young rookie quarterback on a cost-controlled contract, you can make the case that Saquon Barkley could stick around for a few years because you've got the money to spend if you're not spending it on a quarterback. Quarterback is the most expensive position. Running back is one of the cheapest positions. So you can kind of do the math there and say, yeah, maybe we can extend Saquon Barkley for 3 to 4 years. It's definitely possible. What will it take for him to earn that contract? First of all, he needs to play 17 games. I need to see Saquon Barkley throughout the entirety of the 2022 season. He needs to stay healthy. If he gets injured, unfortunately, I think he damns himself out of a contract. I think he's totally screwed if he gets injured this year. I don't think he's going to be getting a second contract with the Giants if he misses 5 to 10 games. He needs to be healthy. You can't invest all this money into a player that you don't know whether or not they're actually going to be on the football field. So for Saquon Barkley, staying healthy is the number one factor. But for the Giants, the number one factor is to get Saquon Barkley productive again, whether that be through the passing game, whether that be with improved run blocking like we're just talking about. So really bringing everything full circle right now. But it will take a lot for Saquon Barkley to earn a contract. Now, there's also the option of the franchise tag. As I mentioned, they could tag Saquon Barkley, but a running back with an injury history, not likely to play on the franchise tag, likely to hold out and force a trade out of the city. That's more likely than anything. I don't think Saquon Barkley would be open to playing on the franchise tag because of his injury history. He needs security for the future. So this is where things can get really interesting because Saquon Barkley isn't going to want to play on a franchise tag. He wants a long-term deal. The Giants aren't going to want to give him a long-term deal unless he's healthy. So if they franchise tag him, what would likely happen is there would be some negotiations and you're probably getting Saquon Barkley on a long-term contract underneath market value. That's very possible just because of the injury history. That's a bargaining chip for both sides. It's a chip for Saquon to get a long-term contract, and it's a chip for the Giants to get Saquon Barkley on a cheaper long-term contract. So at the end of the day, the resolution might actually be the injury history. It could also be the biggest barrier, and it could be the reason that Saquon Barkley does get shipped out of the New York, New Jersey area. But it could be the bargaining chip that both sides need in order to reach an agreement that works for both parties.
Yeah, that's a very good breakdown of how the Giants may actually find a way to keep him. And like you said, that injury may end up being the difference maker in terms of lowering his salary cap hit enough where they can justify it. So we'll see what the Giants do. But first and foremost, we got to see him have a good year, and we got to see him stay healthy. And that's a big if. But a good offensive line, better unit, utilizing him more efficiently, execution, all these things should contribute toward lesser injuries and fewer injuries. And mainly because a lot of times guys like Saquon, Daniel Jones have tried to put themselves in harm's way to try and increase the production of the offense. Daniel Jones is running headfirst, trying to take the ball on his own. Saquon Barkley trying to do too much on his own, carrying a defender on his back. Just take what the defense gives you. Good scheme, a good operation, a good scheme and execution should get your playmakers into places to succeed without having to do too much work. And I think that's really what the Giants are trying to execute this upcoming season, guys. But I'd love to hear your perspectives on OBJ, the interesting quotes that he did have to say on social media, as well as Saquon Barkley having a really good 2022 season and why he could. And if you think he might be a candidate to actually be extended if he does have a good one, and what you think that contract might look like if you're willing to even go that far. Always happy to hear your perspectives and opinions below. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants episode.